Hello there and welcome to another episode of Lincoln City's Match Day Live pre-match show. The Imps travelling to Sixfields this time, of course, hoping to bounce back from a couple of defeats in the week, but a win today could see them go joint top of the League One table. So still plenty to be optimistic about. Got a jam-packed show for you this afternoon. We'll be hearing from the manager, Michael Appleton. Defensive player TJ Ioma will give his pre-match thoughts as well. And of course, we'll have the team news for you with Adam Long, who's pitch side at Sixfields this afternoon, live right bang on 2 o'clock this afternoon. Want to hear your thoughts this afternoon, as ever, where you're watching the pre-match show from, what you think the score and score predictions will be this afternoon. And our topic of debate today is ahead of the upcoming January transfer window, with Michael Appleton saying this week that he's only got 15 fit outfield players at the moment. Of course, he'll probably need a couple of reinforcements in January. Where do you, Lincoln City fans, think that he may need some additional bodies? So let us know. That is our topic this afternoon in terms of additional bodies, extra men to help with this potential promotion push. Where should Michael Appleton strengthen in January? Delighted to say that Gary Hutchinson joins me as ever. Let's bring Gary into the show. Gary, great to see you as normal. A difficult week, but this happens, especially in this crazy EFL season.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we were under any illusions that we were going to lose games. Michael said at the beginning of the season there will be high points and there will be low points. And if at the end of the season we look back and think that a low point was back-to-back defeats that kept us in the playoff places, I think we will have done really well. So really important to keep perspective. You win and lose football games, and it's all about how you bounce back and how you press forward.
Yeah, just on that. So Michael was on Quest midweek, and he gave some brilliant sound bites. But one of the most poignant, most interesting things that he was talking about was the fact that it sort of surpassed myself and you, really, the fact that he actually only has 15 fully fit outfield players, both at the time of saying that and potentially today as well. So, you know, watching that, did it sort of hit home just how difficult this challenge is for this particular football club at the moment?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think the injuries have crept up slowly. Callum Morton and Jamie Sewell obviously were two that we really felt because it cut down our options. But elsewhere across the field, because our squad's quite versatile, it sometimes is easy to forget that in actual fact we are in the grip of an injury crisis. We've lost Adam Jackson at centre-back, for instance. So yeah, very much so. I think when Michael said that, I think it did make a light come on almost. But what I think is really important is it's the first time that he's highlighted it as well. So there hasn't been any bleating, let's say, from the club at all about, oh, poor us, look at the situation we're in. They've kind of got on with the situation. We've still been picking up points on a regular basis, despite having our club captain out, despite now having Conor McGrandles out as well. So I think it was the way that he said it. He didn't say it in a poor me. He said it as in, this is what I'm working with. Let's crack on. And I think that probably reflects the manager's personality perfectly.
2,000 fans expected at Sixfields this afternoon, Gary. It's a stadium that doesn't hold loads. It's certainly not a 20,000 seater. So you would imagine that may well make a bit of a difference for the home side this afternoon.
Yes, it could do. And of course, it could work the other way as well. Remember, they've scored, I think, 1 goal in 6 home games. So if the product on display isn't tip-top, we know how quickly fans can turn. We've all been at Sincilbank when it's happened, when Lincoln are doing well and something goes wrong. So it can work the other way. Sixfields is an odd ground as well, and it's obviously got the one kind of half-built stand. So sound can kind of evaporate quite quickly. Of course, it's a big benefit. Of course, it helps the home side. But if we get at them, and for instance, if we were to get a goal and they were not showing the same amount of attacking intent, we could use it to our own advantage as well.
Gary, let's now have a look back at Tuesday's defeat against Shrewsbury then. I mean, you flagged it up before the match saying that the EFL Trophy game, that did not tell the full story. And this is a pretty good side, actually, under Steve Cotterill. Certainly very well set up. This, of course, was a mistake that happens when you're trying to play out from the back.
Yes, it was, yeah. And, I think it's a rare mistake playing out from the back. Let's take nothing away from Shrewsbury. I said before the game that a single goal would probably win it. If they scored, they would have 2 banks of 4, maybe even all 11 men behind the ball. If we scored, they would find it very, very hard to show any sort of serious attacking intent. And I think so it came to pass. If you actually look at Shrewsbury's results, yes, they were in the bottom 4 when they came to us. But in actual fact, they'd drawn a lot of games that they should have won. And for that, they could easily have been in mid-table. So their performances perhaps were a little bit better than their league position. That said, it was still a game that we would like to have won and we didn't, but that's football.
Yeah, Imps dominated the possession as well. I'm just seeing George Grant going oh so close there, hitting the post. But it was just one of those days. And you know, you saw some fans on Twitter saying that we could have played another full 90 there and not scored. That is probably more testament to the way actually that Shrewsbury defended.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not the first game where I've made that comment myself as well. And Swindon, for instance, had their keeper not flapped at the cross, I think that game could probably have been 0-0 if they were still playing now as well. So it's about how teams set up against us. They know what we do. They know how we play. And they're kind of inviting us to go and break them down. We did come close. But again, when you take into account the injury crisis that we have, when you take into account the lack of options perhaps through the centre that we have, that all goes into that kind of cauldron that mixes up and makes it quite a disappointing result and what many think is a disappointing attacking performance. We had 13 shots at goal, 1 on target. If you get 3 or 4 more of those on target, you score a goal, you get a point. And I think that's the point that the manager will be developing on the training ground.
Do you think that Lincoln City are now classed as a scalp in League One, Gary? You know, sides are coming both to the LNER and, of course, a decent away record for the Imps so far this season as well. And anyone going up against them will think that if we can get a point, if we can get all 3, it's actually now a great result. And if, you know, it's extra motivation essentially for the side that's playing against them. You saw the reaction from Shrewsbury fans knowing that they beat a side that was challenging for promotion once again. This is the way it's going to be now.
Yeah, I think so to a degree. And I think that's kind of also on a knife's edge. I think you look at Bristol Rovers last season, they went into Christmas in 4th. They were not considered a scalp. It was considered a false and elevated position, and they tumbled all the way down the table. I think that's one aspect to take in mind, that yes, we are a scalp at the moment because of where we are. But I think when you look at the attitude of some of the clubs that we've faced this season as well, and even teams like Sunderland, I saw on a Sunderland message board a thread, would you take a point at Lincoln? I mean, what a phenomenal place to be in. So Northampton will consider us a scalp if they beat us today. And when you're going away to any club at all, I think that pays tribute to how well you've done.
You got a little bit of stick as well for that, didn't you, by a couple of Sunderland fans as well, Gary?
I took some stick from Sunderland fans. A tweet that I put out was misperceived by them. I wanted to underline how well I thought we had done, and they thought it was a slur on them. Sensitive lot, considering they won 4-0.
Let's go to some of your comments then. Niall says, we have the players to play out from the back. We make as much mistakes, if not less, as other teams who have the players to play out from the back. And that's a really good point, isn't it, Gary? Look, if you're going to go down this route and we want to see teams play out from the back, we want to see good football at the LNER Stadium, mistakes are going to happen. And considering the inconsistency of this season overall, I think back to playing out from the back on a mistake, the only other one as opposed to a Tuesday that stands out for me is actually against Liverpool, obviously the world, European and Premier League champions at the time. You know, it's not a bad ratio so far this season, considering this is a side that does like to play out from defence.
100%. Mistakes happen whichever way you decide to play football. If you play long ball and you punt it out, a mistake happens, and people say, oh, that doesn't result in a goal. I remember us playing very long ball under John Beck, and we got thumped 7-1 at Colchester, 7-1 at Bury, because when it didn't work, it really didn't work. So it doesn't matter what level of football you are at, a mistake will be made. I think some people have a bugbear about playing out from the back. There's a perception that, you know, get away from your own goal as quickly as possible. Best form of attack is defence and that sort of thing. So it plays into a narrative. You know, we don't want to be playing out from the back at this level. In actual fact, we're 4th in League One. We could be joint top at the end of the day. So for me, that's proof that playing out from the back actually isn't too bad at all, is it?
We didn't have a chance to talk about the left side, and I know that's something that you flagged up. You obviously look at the stats after the game, Gary. Anthony Scully obviously occupying that left-hand side, but then we saw Tom Hopper drift to the left a little bit as well. Could you just give us a bit of an insight as to why you think that was the case and that Tom didn't stay completely central? Because there was reason behind that, wasn't there?
Yeah, Ben picked it up on the podcast that Tom seemed to be out of the area quite a bit, and we know that's part of Tom's game. It might even be part of our game plan. But in actual fact, I've said before on this show that Anthony Scully for me isn't an out-and-out winger. He's best played centrally, and when he's playing on the left, he's often found cutting in. He's often wanting to receive the ball with his back to goal in the channel. And so if we do still want to play expansive football, which we do, somebody needs to fill out that gap. Teo Eden pushes forward quite a bit, and I think we saw him a couple of weeks ago, possibly Shrewsbury, have a great game because he was able to get forward in the left wing position as well. We actually didn't create a chance from the left on Tuesday night. I love XG, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, and I'll get a lot of stick for. But our XG was 0.87, and we didn't create a single digit of XG at all from the left-hand side. Everything came from the centre and from the right. So I think that's something certainly that Anthony Scully will be looking at and want to work on should he keep his place in the side. He was certainly very busy, but I think it's about fitting into the pattern that we play more than kind of getting on the ball in the wrong areas.
Good stuff, Gary. Our other XG, our expected guest that joins us on today's show is Chris Lamming. Delighted to say that Chris joins us now. Hopefully we can bring him in. There he is. Chris, great to see you. Nice to have you on Matchday Live for the first time this season as well. My first question to you is, how are you finding the process of watching every game on the television?
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. Obviously, I think it goes without saying that we'd all rather be there, but you guys do your best to keep us all involved as much as possible, and I'm enjoying being able to watch every game. I don't get the chance to go to too many away games normally, so at least we get to see every minute of Lincoln City this season.
What are you expecting from today's game, Chris?
I want to be as positive as possible. I think it depends very much on how Northampton's set up, actually. I could be wrong, but I feel like we've struggled at times to break down a back five or back three that turns into a back five without the ball. And as we saw on Tuesday night, if Tom Hopper kind of gets dragged out wide to try and create space for us, there's still going to be, even if one of the centre halves goes with him, there's still going to be two centre halves there to mark effectively nobody. Whereas if they play a back four, I feel like it could be a really good game for us. So fingers crossed they play a back four, and fingers crossed we score an early goal. I think the longer the game goes without a goal, the more that will probably play into Northampton's hands.
Chris, obviously, I know you as you're a Sunday League manager. You played youth football for Lincoln as well. As a manager, how much weight do you put behind XG? And is it important to keep seeing positive XG, even if we're not putting the chances in the back of the net?
I don't get a chance to see XG very much on a Sunday morning. I'd love to. That'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? Do it on a Wednesday night of training. I'm a bit of a stats man. I like to use it to give me an overview when maybe my eyes are frustrating me a little bit. So on Tuesday night, I think the overall feeling was frustration. I kind of felt like we played quite well. So it was nice to know that we did still have a positive XG. But I think with 70-odd% possession, 15 shots apparently, even though only one was on target, you probably want to be creating it, more than one XG or less than one XG that we had. So I think it's useful to take into consideration, but I don't think it's the be-all and end-all, certainly.
What about the season overall then, Chris? Obviously, you're a man that says he likes to see a few stats. The stats have looked pretty good for Lincoln City so far. The discussion that myself and Gary are having just before you joined us on the show was this debate about playing out from the back. Are you one of those that prefers to see that sort of attempt, or would you rather just sort of go and hoof it and clear the danger as soon as possible?
If we've got the players to do it, I think it can be really useful for us. Certainly when it works well, I think we've looked at our most dangerous when we have done it. If we can suck the team onto us a little bit, the opposition onto us, I think Oxford at the start of the season is a prime example of that. Play out from the back, beat the press, and we've suddenly got space to attack. I think if teams sit off us, that's when we maybe struggle a little bit to create something. So I quite like it if we're confident enough to play out and beat the press. I think we can be a really dangerous side.
What about today's team news then, Chris? What are you expecting from Michael Appleton's side?
I'd like to see Harry Anderson start again, mainly because it allows us to have Brendan Johnson and Anderson as our wide players. I agree with Gary. I think that Anthony Scully's best position is centrally, and I feel like it didn't work too well with him on Tuesday night. We just missed that that central presence, I think. I also think that Remy Howarth deserves to keep his place in the team. He grew into the game on Tuesday night, and what I really liked about him, which I think if we have a similar sort of game today as we did on Tuesday, what I quite liked about him was he was really comfortable receiving the ball in really tight areas, and he kept the ball very close to his body and sucked people in. So personally, I'd like to see him retain his place in the team. Just one change for me, probably Anderson for Scully.
Just finally then, Chris, one of the topics of today's show is regarding January reinforcements. Obviously, the January transfer window not too far away. We know Michael Appleton potentially needs a couple of heads to come in and help sort of bolster the squad. What positions would you like to see strengthened?
I think everyone in the world would say centre forward, which I think Tom Hopper needs some support. I'd also like to see another defensive midfielder come in, so that if Liam Bridcut is injured, we haven't got to rely on George Grant playing in that kind of quarterback role. It can be really effective against some teams, but I think in some situations we'd like to have our most creative players further up the pitch, and when there's no one else really that can fill that role at the moment, it'd be nice to have someone that can fill that role if Bridcut is injured.
Gary hates giving score predictions, but I'll ask you for yours.
I think a 1-0 win. I think a 1-0 win for Lincoln. I think it'll be a nervy one. If we score early, I think we could maybe win relatively comfortably, but anything to get us over the line would be nice for Christmas, wouldn't it? But yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-0 Lincoln win.
Yeah, it certainly would, Chris. That's what we like. Positivity, optimism.
That's right.
Learn something, Gary. Chris, thanks very much for your time. We'll let you get off and get settled ahead of the game on iFollow. Do enjoy it. Of course, the Imps can get a 1-0 win or maybe even more.
Thanks, Chris.
Fan and part-time Sunday League manager as well, Gary. Is that right, you say?
Yes, he manages Rugby Sunday League team, which was the only Sunday League team I ever appeared for a long while before Chris was probably born, let alone manager.
That's why you wanted to get him on the show. It all makes total sense now. Gary, Chris mentioned George Grant there. This is what Michael Appleton had to say, giving his pre-match press conference. He was asked by Rob Makepeace about the George Grant contract situation. The manager admitted that he's had a chat with George. This is what he had to say about how that went.
Yeah, it went well, I think, but obviously time will tell. But no, I mean, obviously we're in a position with him that, he's obviously a very ambitious lad, and he has the quality to play at the next level. We know that, but we want to be able to give him the opportunity to do that with ourselves. And if it isn't this season, put ourselves in a position where we can convince him that, if we do fall short and it doesn't quite happen this year, then next year might be the way. So I still think there's a bit of time to go and a bit of, negotiation, so to speak. But I have to say, it felt very positive.
Is it something you want to get done by the end of January? So if you feel things aren't going your way, you might be able to at least get some money for him rather than let him go for nothing in the summer?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think with the timing in terms of what he's got left in his contract, I'm not sure, what type of fee that would certainly get at this stage, especially with COVID and the way things are. I don't see that being an option, if I'm being honest. I think the two options here is either going to stay and be a Lincoln City player beyond this season, or he's going to be here to the end of the season. I don't see him leaving in January in any way, shape or form. That's just, I could be completely wrong, but that's just, the way the climate is at the minute. And whatever does happen, all I would say is that, he's been professionally great so far, and I don't see any reason to think that that's going to change.
Gary, it's great to hear a manager talking so openly. I mean, clearly to the fans, obviously speaking to Rob Makepeace there, but he knows when he's addressing Rob that he's actually talking to the fans there as well. And it is great to hear a manager be so open about a current, contract situation about one of his star players.
Yeah, because it's a very delicate situation as well. Footballers are people just like you and I. They have jobs just like you and I. And so what we're actually talking about here is somebody's future, somebody's family, somebody's direction. So often managers are quite reticent, but then that can lead to speculation as well. So I quite like the fact that Michael is clear without going into specifics. He certainly let us know what he believes is going to happen. He hasn't made any bold promises at all. He hasn't put any pressure on George at all either. It's in the players' court. I think what he wants to do is probably take away the speculation and let George concentrate on his football because he is key to the club, especially with Liam Bridcut out as well. And so that's quite clever man management, I think.
Overall, it sounds pretty promising as well. A couple of wry smiles there from Michael when he was talking about this situation. It would suggest that things are going fairly well, although he has been open. He's admitted that, he doesn't want to lose him in January, but at the end of the day, it's all about being honest.
Yeah, it is. I agree from his perspective as well. He did have a couple of wry smiles. He looked relatively comfortable with the situation. I think that's probably as much to do with the fact that he'll have contingency plans in place for players leaving. And I think that'll be the case all over the field, not just in George Grant's role. But at the same time, if he were fearful of losing what is very much a key player, I would imagine that he would look a little bit more concerned. But my gut feeling is, George is of an age now where he's no longer a younger player. I chatted to him for the Burton Albion programme, which I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to ruin the interview. But he certainly suggested that perhaps he felt a little bit nomadic earlier in his career with his loan spells. And let us bear in mind, he has just had a little one, so he's got a family, he's settled here as well. And I think all of that probably will play a part in whatever decision he does or doesn't have to make.
Okay, well, that's the George Grant situation so far, keeping you up to date as much as we can. This is what Michael had to say about today's opponents, Northampton. Here is his pre-match thoughts.
Going on to this weekend's game then, it's a bit like the other night, isn't it? Many people will look at it and expect you to get the 3 points, but Northampton is certainly a side who like to spring a surprise or two.
Yeah, they do, and I think the league in general itself, I think we've seen so far that it's very, very unpredictable and anyone can beat anybody, and you've only got to look at the amount of points that even the teams in the bottom four, the amount of points that they've got so far at this stage as a bottom four club. So nothing for granted. It's going to be a difficult game. Obviously, they're on the back of a heavy defeat at Oxford, but I have to say they had a lot of players missing from that game, whether it be through injury, suspension, certainly at the back anyway. A couple of players that we're familiar with that may return tomorrow. So, we're expecting a tough encounter, and obviously, one that we'll be looking to get back to winning ways ASAP. Yeah,
Kean Bolger and Alan Sheehan, obviously there. Does it help when you're coming up against players that you know well, that you've coached, that you feel you can find an advantage when you come up against them?
I think definitely you've got a little bit of information about them, but having said that, because of obviously watching games all the time and video of games, the strengths and weaknesses of most players you come up against. But again, I suppose the flip side of that is that they'll probably have that extra motivation and drive and determination to try and make sure that they win the game and play their best and be part of what they think is going to be a winning team.
Let's get to the usual injury question then. The ones that are injured, are they recovering as expected?
They're kind of recovering as expected, but we're still where we are. We won't be able to fulfil the bench again, and we've still only got, I think it's 15 fit outfield players as it stands at this minute. But that may change for Boxing Day. One or two have got a reasonable chance of coming in. I think beyond that, getting into the whole game, I think that's where hopefully one or two might start returning on, hopefully on a regular basis throughout the month of January.
And no new injuries picked up on Tuesday?
Just Lewis, really. I'm hoping, keeping my fingers crossed, it'll be fine for tomorrow. But I think everyone's seen it in the area he made. He went into a challenge. So with Udo, the striker, and he come out second best. He got a bit of a knock to his ankle, but I think it's just a kick. It's not a twist or a strain or anything. So maybe just a little bit of an ego bruise more than anything else, and hopefully he'll be fine for tomorrow.
Yeah, hopefully he's fine indeed, Gary. Let's start with that then. Lewis Monsma picking up a slight knock against Shrewsbury midweek. If he doesn't start this afternoon, who comes into the side?
Well, Robbie Gotts probably comes into the side, and then we see a reshuffle. Gotts at right back, and TJ Ioma almost certainly going into the defence. Obviously, to complement Joe Walsh, who's naturally left-sided anyway. So that's the change I would imagine would be made. There are obviously a couple of other options. Max Melbourne could come into the defence, but with him being left-sided, it would mean moving Joe Walsh over. I think that would probably be a little bit too make do, so to speak. And obviously Harry Anderson can play right back as well, so it could be an opportunity for Harry to come in and again TJ fill in. But there are plenty of options despite us not having all that many players.
Yeah, Michael mentioned there, it's just, in one sense, it's just about getting to January, isn't it? And to be able to do so in this position, speaking, I'll go back to what he said on Quest midweek on the EFL highlights show. They're about a year ahead at the moment. That just puts it into perspective, doesn't it? And now, to be at this stage now, where we're talking about a game where the Imps can go joint top of the League One table, but they're still hoping that they can get to January just to get some more bodies through the door, is quite an incredible situation to be in, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, especially when you consider it's probably the strongest League One roster for many years, with your Portsmouths, your Ipswiches, your Hulls, your Peterboroughs a big spending, your Sunderlands are a huge club. So it's a tough League One, and I think historically, if you look back, it's probably the toughest for the last 5, maybe even 10 years. Who knows? So to be where we are is utterly phenomenal. As you say, we are a year away from really where Michael wants us to be. He's never ever promised anything this year, apart from surprising a few people. He's doing it on a threadbare squad as well. So it's hugely important we get to January, but there's no magic wand. As politicians always say, there is no magic money tree. We are still in this situation, this kind of COVID-driven situation where there is a gap in the club's revenue, which has got to be plugged. So there's not. I don't want fans to start thinking we're going to go out spending money. We almost certainly won't be. Certainly won't be buying players. I would imagine if he is able to get players in, it would be through the loan market or by player trading, which means out and in. So we're in a very good position, and I think everybody can trust Michael's recruitment, certainly on the strength of what he's done so far for the club.
We'll be bringing you the team news live with Alan Long in about 3 minutes' time, so do stay with us for that one. Gary, you mentioned the League One roster at the moment. If we have a look at the League One table, because as ever, it makes for pretty good viewing indeed. I mentioned before that if the Imps win today, they can go joint top. Portsmouth were the ones that beat Hull yesterday, so they'll go into the official Christmas period, top of the charts there. When you look at that, Gary, what do you make of it overall? Because the results are pretty sort of skew-if at the moment, aren't they? Hull losing a couple in a row. Obviously, Lincoln, as we know, losing a couple in a row as well. Peterborough seem to be a little bit unpredictable too. It's just the way things are at the moment, isn't it? Yeah,
unusual to see so many teams having lost 5-6 games. No runaway leaders. Portsmouth, yes, they are top, but look at that, got 2 games in hand and only 3 points behind. So it's really tightly packed. And if you go below 6th, and bear in mind Doncaster have crept up quite nicely there, by the way. If you go below 6th, you've got Accrington, who I think have got enough games in hand to overall Huz. You've got Sunderland, who are in a very good position. You've got Blackpool, who are putting a lot of results together. You've got Charlton there as well, who will be expecting to be in the top 6. You've arguably got 10, 12 teams who expect to be competing in the playoffs. We're not one of them. We're not a team that expects to be competing in the playoffs, and yet we are doing. And when you look at that, which position there would you prefer to be in? Which club? With us, 2 games in hand, 3 points behind the leaders, conceding very, very few goals. Only Sunderland have conceded fewer. And when you consider that we've lost 3-1 and 4-0 to Sunderland and Portsmouth, in actual fact, we've got a phenomenal defensive record. So it looks brilliant. But that's always a starting point. Every week, the league table is your starting point. To go out, get a result today would leave us in a great place going into Burton on Boxing Day.
Just really quickly, Gary, as well, Doncaster creeping up there as well. Are they a side that you could see maybe sneaking into the playoffs?
Yeah, they're a surprise to me, actually. I thought Darren Moore might struggle, but they've brought in some key players. They're very reliant on loans, but then they do have Ben Whiteman as well, who's a player that I massively admire, really quality footballer for this level. And Darren Moore, like I say, he has done a good job. He did a decent job at West Brom and was unlucky to lose his job there as well. So keep an eye on Doncaster, keep an eye on Blackpool. I said it at the beginning of the season, I stick by it. Neil Critchley gets it right. They're a top 6 side all day long.
Just quickly, a couple of comments coming in. Well, plenty of them, actually. But Chris Taylor-Keneally, great to have Chris on the show, says, Steve's right. Players do come and go. Look at Bozzy, Erds and Freck. They're all replaceable. I'm more worried about keeping hold of Appleton. Definitely destined for big things. Just hope we can keep him for a couple of years. Up the Imps. David Johnson says, Grant fits Appleton's tactics and is the key man here if he goes up. We wouldn't likely be afforded that luxury in his opinion. And Cornell says, don't worry, Sam and Gary. Appleton knows what he's doing and he always has a plan B come the January transfer window. Absolutely, Cornell. We're not worried. Don't worry. Don't worry. Let's go to Alan Long now, who has today's Lincoln City team news to face Northampton.
Hi Sam, yeah, welcome to the PTS Academy. Well, it's no changes here at all. It's the same as it was Tuesday night. So in goal is number 1 Alex Palmer, at 4 Lewis Montsma, at 7 Theo Eden, at 8 James Jones, 9 Tom Hopper, 10 George Grant, 11 Anthony Scully, 16 Joe Walsh, 17 Remy Howarth, at 20 is Brennan Johnson, and at 22 is TJ Ioma. On the bench, 31 Sam Long, 3 Max Melbourne, 25 Zach Elbazedi, 26 Harry Anderson, and at 30 is Sean Rowan. Quickly run through the starting lineup again. So we've got Alex Palmer, Lewis Montsma, Theo Eden, James Jones, Tom Hopper, George Grant, Anthony Scully, Joe Walsh, Remy Howarth, Brendan Johnson and TJ Ioma. From the PTS Academy, back to you in the nice warm studio, Sam.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. It's nice and warm, but I'd certainly rather be there, wouldn't you, Gary?
100%. It's not so warm in here, to be honest.
I have to get the fire on. No changes then, as Alan rightly told us. Gary, what do you make of that?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? I do think Remy Howarth did enough to keep his place in the starting lineup. I'm not surprised at that. I think when you have 13 shots on goal, it proves that we were getting into the right areas. So, we were probably only ever one action away from scoring a couple against Shrewsbury. So I always used to say consistency is king. I'm not going to lie and say that I am not surprised, because I am a little. But I'm also delighted that Lewis is fit and playing at the back.
Yeah, let's talk about Lewis quickly then. Great to have him back straight away. What will be going through his mind? He seemed fairly calm after that error that he made with it. He doesn't seem like a player that will shirk a responsibility. Doesn't seem like a player that has the weight of the world on his shoulders. If anything, it's the opposite. I don't know if it's that Dutch calmness that he seems to have.
I would like to think that most professionals are able to shrug it off. I think the fact that he was the player that got our shot on target and drew a great save just before half-time showed how quickly he shrugged it off. If you actually look at the stats, he only gave the ball away 3 times all afternoon, or all evening rather. So he actually turned in a very composed performance, and I think people will probably judge him on the one action that went wrong. He's huge for us. We talk about George Grant being one of our key players, without a doubt. Lewis Monsma is as well. He's great on the ball. He carries it forward. He helps that transition from defence to midfield without having to make the pass. And when he pings a 30-yard ball cross-field 2 feet, it makes the game more expansive. In an encounter with the likes of Northampton, the likes of Shrewsbury, which are going to be who are very compact and get men behind the ball, that moment of creativity could be the difference between winning, drawing or losing.
I thought Teo had a really good game the other night, or particularly in the second half, Gary. You mentioned on the podcast as well that his range of passing is something that you don't necessarily, I should say, see from a lot of wing backs. He has the ability to pick maybe a pass that certainly us as fans might not see as well. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think Teo is a divisive character, purely because he's not the stereotypical image of a left back or a wing back. We've seen the likes of Harry Toffolo in the past, going back further, your Stuart Bimson's, players like that get down the line and they're burly. Teo's a much more technical footballer. He has a good range of passing. It didn't always come off in the early part of the season, and I think he found his reputation with some fans tarnished a little because he had some poor games. But overall, in recent weeks, bar Sunderland, where everybody had, in my opinion, a bad game, I actually don't think he's bad. I stand by my comments that he's made the left-back position his own, purely, I think, because he is able to play out of tight spaces. He isn't the rampaging fullback, but if you actually look back, certainly beating Shrewsbury 4-1, he was getting down the line on numerous occasions. So, again, I think in terms of consistency, I think to have the back four remain the same for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row, I think Michael might like to be able to shake it up, but it's not actually such a bad thing. And when you look at how many goals we've actually been conceding, I think our back four is probably what I would say the least concerning area on the field.
Hoping to get the Lincoln City starting 11 for you on the ticker, just below myself and Gary Hutchinson there. If we can bring in the Lincoln City starting 11, for those that are just joining us this afternoon as well, I will take you through it. Michael Appleton has stayed with the side that he picked to face Shrewsbury on Tuesday night. It is Alex Palmer in goal, TJ Ioma, Lewis Monsma, Joe Walsh and Teo Eden. They make up the back four, the back five. George Grant is the captain. Remy Howarth keeps his place, having made a start against Shrewsbury on Tuesday. James Jones is alongside him. It is then Brennan Johnson. Anthony Scully is back in, and Tom Hopper, the number 9, starts up front for the Imps. Long, Melbourne, Gotts, Elbazedi, Anderson and Rowan. Let's talk about Remy Howarth, Gary. I was lucky enough to be there on Tuesday night. I say lucky, obviously it was a defeat, but I'm lucky in the sense that I got to watch the game live. And I thought Remy played really well. I thought he looked busy, which is sometimes can be seen as a negative. But actually, you need those type of players in your squad. And he seems to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. He has to look busy because he's replacing Conor McGrandles at the moment, who is the busiest footballer that I've seen for an awful long while. I think with Remy, there's differences. I think Remy's perhaps more attack-minded. He likes to get on the ball. He likes to get forward. Yeah, he always plays with exuberance. You always know you're going to get 100% from Remy. I think people buy into his story as well. He's a bit of an unknown quantity, and I think that's something that Michael's probably experimenting with, rather than, for instance, Gotts, who we've seen quite a bit of this season. I think he's looking to spring the odds surprise. Northampton won't have expected us to be unchanged. And again, with a player like Remy, we've seen from his clips from the Welsh side, which I'm not going to attempt to pronounce on air, that he does have a penchant for the spectacular. So it'll be interesting to see how he does this afternoon.
Anthony Scully again, a player we often discuss, is back in. I've seen a really interesting comment actually, as the comments come flying in. Lo and behold, of course, I'm probably going to miss it now. Someone commented before saying that actually, with regards to Harry Anderson, a lot of teams are sort of cottoning on to him. They're shutting him down at source. Do you think that's something? Obviously now, yeah, Michael alluded to it before as well. League One managers have the option now. They're able to watch every single game like we are as fans. They're able to see all the stats like we are as fans. And if you shut Harry Anderson down at source, you've got a very good chance of winning. Is that in Michael's thinking at all? Is there a reason as to why Harry's not starting once again? Because Anthony Scully has looked really threatening in the games that he's played as well.
Yeah, I think it's horses for courses. I saw the comment. I think it was Jason Bosworth put the comment in. And I'm not sure that every manager is shutting Harry down, because I think when teams come to attack us, they're not looking to stop us playing. So Oxford, Charlton, Ipswich, they're the sorts of teams that come and play against us. And when they're playing against us, playing their game, that's when Harry thrives, because that's when there are gaps, because teams push forward. And also we've seen Harry develop, I think, as a player. So to kind of say maybe that teams are shutting him down on purpose also points to him being one-dimensional, which I don't think is the case. But there is an element of truth to it that certain teams play to stop us playing. And that's Northampton, that's Shrewsbury, that's Wigan to a degree. And that will be a host of other teams over the course of the season, perhaps Burton, perhaps Wimbledon. When teams want to stop us playing, what they do is they tend to sit a lot deeper, so there's no green space to run into. And that basically nullifies much of Harry's threat, much of Zach Elbazedi's threat, because these are players that are quick. These are players that want green space to run into. They want to get in behind and they want to use that pace to basically burn up and get into the area. When teams are playing a lot deeper, as certainly I think Northampton will today, we need a little bit more guile. And that's not to say that Harry and Zach haven't got that. But in Brennan Johnson and Anthony Scully, you've got players that are perhaps a little bit more comfortable with the ball at their feet and two players in front of them, and looking to be a lot more patient when they're picking the passes as well. So as I say, I think it's horses for courses. And I think Harry will be back in when we start playing teams who perhaps are a little bit more open against us again.
Okay, good stuff, Gary. One man starting today is TJ Ioma. These are his pre-match thoughts.
Just more exposure, really. I think you get to show your quality more. Also, it's more competitive, so you're playing against loads of experienced players, so that will develop you and help you going forward in your career.
And you played a lot more at right back than you have at centre half this year. Has it been good learning that and learning that position game by game?
Yeah, definitely. I think at right back, I've been improving a lot. Like I said before, I was a bit apprehensive going forward, but I think I'm learning the role more and more. So hopefully I just keep improving. I'm working hard for the team.
And sometimes as a player, when you do change position, can it surprise you the quality you have maybe, with your crossing and that? Because as a centre-half, you're not tending to get into a wide area and cross the ball at the byline. But certainly as a fullback, you're doing that a lot. Yeah,
a little bit. I think I'm naturally fit, so I can get up and down. So that's helped me a lot. And my final third play is improving a lot. So hopefully I can just keep improving my final third play and help the team with more assists.
And how important is it that relationship you have with whoever's playing out wide on the right, whether it was Brennan for a lot of Tuesday night or Harry or Anthony?
Yeah, I think it's vitally important, just knowing their strengths and my strengths, of course, and just creating that bond to help the team and do well.
We're headed into the Christmas period. Are you a player who enjoys the amount of games you're going to have over the next fortnight?
Yeah, definitely. I think these games will come thick and fast, and hopefully we can just recover and pick up the points we need to.
And I noticed on Tuesday you were chatting with Shiloh, who obviously is a Tottenham loanee as well at Shrewsbury. Is it nice sometimes when you come up against some of your teammates in normal life at Tottenham that you're then suddenly becoming opponents at a League One level?
Yeah, definitely. It's always nice to see a old face. We were just talking after the game about how he's doing, how I'm doing. So hopefully he can keep doing well for Shrewsbury, and I can hopefully back up the game and keep doing well for Lincoln.
Yeah, what is your aim between now and the end of the season? Is it just to try and cement that spot at right back like you have so far?
Yeah, definitely cement the spot at right back. Hopefully play a couple games centre back and just generally improve as a player, and hopefully we can do well as a team, like I said before.
Northampton this weekend, I guess the key message from the manager is to make sure that you don't underestimate them despite them being in the bottom four.
Yeah, definitely. It's got to be another tough game. I don't think there's any easy games in this league. So we have to prepare right, and hopefully we'll show our quality on the day.
Yeah, Gary, he seems to be really enjoying his football here in Lincoln.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it again. He made his league debut on the opening day at the same time as Sean Rowan. This isn't an experienced senior footballer that we've got in the side. It's a young lad making his way in his career. And I think that how quickly he is settled and how calm and confident he looks on the ball is testament to his overall ability. He's clearly enjoying playing regular football. In my opinion, he should be one of the first names on the team sheet. I think along with Conor McGrandles, he's probably the most underrated member of our squad that we have. I think the boy's got a big future ahead of him.
Yeah, he's one of those players that you'd like to see sign a permanent deal then, because, you know, he's shown a lot of quality. And not only that, you know, a lot of comments coming in saying just how versatile a player TJ is. And that's just so important, particularly at the back, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, to pick up the first point, absolutely, he's a player I would love to see come here permanently. And of all of the loan signings, he's probably one that may well do that looking further into the future. I mean, I know he just signed a new contract with Spurs, but he's the sort of player like Mark Bowler at Arsenal, dropped into League One permanently with Blackpool and then moved back to Middlesbrough, I believe. So that could be a route for him. I also think in terms of versatility, what's really important to note with TJ is he never looks like a right back playing at centre back or a centre back playing at right back. And I think sometimes when you have that versatility, and let's say you're a centre half who can play right back, when you're there, it stands out that actually you are a bit of a centre-half. James Wilson comes to mind, who obviously played right back for us a lot and clearly looked like a centre-half. You don't get that with TJ. Whichever position he's in, he looks like that's his natural position. And I think that comes from having natural ability. He understands the game. He understands both positions and he's able to adjust his game accordingly.
Absolutely. Great stuff, Gary. Right, let's bring in a Northampton Town fan now. Delighted to say that Charles from the It's All Cobblers, great name, podcast joins us now. Charles, nice to see you. 18th in League One, I believe. Does that tell the full story of the season so far?
I'm going to say that there's probably fans that will turn around and say we should be bottom. So it probably doesn't tell the full story. Most of our results have come against the ones that are in and around us. I think the only team that we've beaten in the sort of top half is Fleetwood. Most of our wins, we've beaten Shrewsbury, Swindon, Wigan. All of those teams are obviously down below us, so or were below us at the time that we beat them. And we're on a poor run at the moment, really poor run. Not quite sure how well today is going to go. I'm personally hoping that the simple fact that we've got 2,000 fans in is going to save us.
Yeah, that's the key point, really, isn't it? I mean, how big is that going to be potentially for your side this afternoon? I mentioned at the top of the show, yeah, a bit like the LNER Stadium in the sense that it's not the biggest stadium in the world. 2,000 can make a heck of a difference. We see 2,000 making a big difference at the likes of Anfield and Tottenham Hotspur's stadium that holds in excess of 50,000 people. So at a 10,000 seater, you'd imagine it will go some way to helping the home side.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the big difference for me, if you take like that game you're talking about that happened at the Spurs Stadium, the noise was incredible, wasn't it? But they were all in that one, like, purpose-built stand that's basically been made, hasn't it, to make the noise remain inside the stadium. I think our fans are all going to be spread out across at least 3 of the 4 stands. I know that there are fans that are seating technically in the away end, and that'll be the first time that they've ever done that as Cobblers fans at home. So whether there'll be a noise as such, I don't know. I mean, our stadium really, if you've been, you'll know, when you're there and you're in amongst the noise, you think it's the loudest thing in the world, but actually at the other end of the ground, it's not that noisy at all. That's no disrespect to anybody. That's basically the schematics of the stadium. All the noise just basically gets lost straight out up the top, and goes over and out of the ground. So I don't really see that it'll maybe make any noticeable difference for anybody that's watching on iFollow. Yeah, you'll hear the fact that there are fans there, mostly moaning. I'm going to probably hasten to add. Sure, that happens at Sincil Bank as well, so I wouldn't really read too much into it. But I'm just hopeful that the fact that there are going to be fans there will make our players just want to win it a bit more. Not that they're not professional and that they don't want to win it for themselves and things like that, but you know, there's that home advantage having your own fans there. The fact that there aren't going to be any Lincoln fans there is probably going to be a bit strange for both the players and for the fans as well. I spoke to a few that went to our so-called tester event, which was the Doncaster home game a couple of weeks ago, and they said it was very surreal. And after about 50 minutes or so, the whole sort of, you know, being at a game had not worn off as such, but it wasn't the same. There was no back and forth between the two sets of fans or anything like that. So really, it kind of just ended up dwindling down into being quite a quiet, just watching the football event, like you might do if you were sat at home watching it. So we'll kind of see what happens.
Gary Hutchinson's got a question for you, Charles.
Hi, Charles. Quite interested in Keith Curle, a manager that we've come up against numerous times over 17 years. Doesn't really have a reputation for playing long ball football, so to speak, but kind of has got that with you at the moment. Is that fair? And have you seen any evolution of it over the last 6 months or so?
Perfectly fair. And no. It is. It's hard. So I'm not somebody that is a massive fan or massively against him. When we took him on, and he came in as our manager, I was unimpressed. If I'm being honest, he was never a manager that made me go, "Wow, this is brilliant." But at the same time, I was like, got to give every manager a go. Let's see what happens. And to his credit, he came in and he sorted out the dressing room, which was terrible. The players that we had the year before, which was the last time that we were in League One. So we had the likes of Kevin Van Veen, who's back at Scunthorpe these days, Ash Taylor, who's playing for Aberdeen, Matt Crooks, who is at Rotherham now, I think. Big name signings, really, big name players who should have been full of quality, and they were, maybe not Ash Taylor, but they just didn't do it. And I think their egos were bigger than the club. And the one thing that Curle did was he came in and he just went, "I'm not having it." Ash Taylor started not playing so many games. Rumours of him just leaving the ground before or just after the team sheet had been announced. Wasn't really the best atmosphere, apparently, to start off with some of those big name players. Kevin Van Veen got sold back to Scunthorpe a year to the day almost from when we bought him. And we managed to steady the ship. And then he brought in his own players that were, and they always are, just firm and steady. Especially in League Two. I mean, you'll know when you've been in League Two, some of the times what you need is you just need solid players, not somebody that's going to go and, you know, light up the life of the world and make everybody stand up on their feet every time they get the ball. But you just need players that are going to actually just be solid and give you 7 out of 10 performances every week. And that's what Curle brought in. Last year was really, really good and epitomised that. You know, all the players that he got in were 7 out of 10s every single day, you know, that we played. yes, we had some poor results. We lost to Scunthorpe 3-0. That seemed to be a bit of a catalyst, though. And then we went on and won something like 5 out of 7 and went on a little run. But then, obviously, everything that happened last year, we do end up in the playoffs and then we go and win them fairly spectacularly after losing the first leg to Cheltenham, which was as much as a surprise for us, I think, as for anybody else. I thought we were dead and buried after that first leg. I thought there's absolutely no way we'll turn over 2. We might go there and win, but I didn't expect us to win so emphatically. And then to do what we did at Wembley was absolutely incredible. And I don't think I'll have ever seen anything like that before or since, to be honest, in a cobbler's sense. And then, as seems to happen every single time that Northampton get promoted, all our best players go. Normally, our manager goes. That's the one thing that we actually said at the start of the season was our best signing was keeping Keith Curle. Hindsight can be a wonderful thing. And it's one of those where he just seems to have struggled to have replaced the ones that we've lost. So Charlie Good, we can't deny, him a chance to go and play in the Championship. We can't also turn down £1.5 million, which, nobody can do that at our level, I would suggest. Trying to replace somebody like that is nigh on impossible, especially at more or less the last minute. So that was really difficult, and we haven't really done that. Essentially, we lost our entire back 4, so we played, and we still do, we play 3 centre-backs, and then a goalkeeper, obviously. Di Cornell, goalkeeper last year, signed for Ipswich. I don't think he was ever going to stay. He'd been at the club for maybe 4 or 5 years anyway. I think he wanted a new challenge, so I think he was always leaving. We got Steve Arnold, who came in as number 2 for last season. He became number 1 at the start of this season. And we signed Jonathan Mitchell on loan from Derby County, who seems a really, really good hot prospect for the future. But then the 3 centre-backs that we've taken on, so Kian Bolger, who you guys will know very, very well, and you'll know exactly why. I'm not going to say any more about that. And then you've got the other 2 guys that just haven't really hit it off. I mean, Luca Ratchets came in on loan from Brentford in almost kind of some sort of swap deal as part of that Charlie Good transfer. Last few games, we've seen pictures on Instagram of him sat in a day spa. So no idea what's going on with that. Keith Cole doesn't talk about injuries, so it may well be that he's just injured. But we don't know. And our defence just hasn't been good enough. And George Horsfall, who is the other player that we signed for defence from Macclesfield, it shows that he's from Macclesfield, to be honest. Just not good enough. And the signings that we made haven't been, it's not, they're not even on a par with what we had last season. So to sort of come into this season on a high of winning the playoffs, you want to be obviously going and putting your stamp on a new division. It feels like we're having to start all over again. And up until recently, it wasn't going at all to plan. And then the last 2 games, it's been absolutely dreadful.
Charles, I think you've just about covered absolutely everything that is required from an opposition Northampton Town fan. For that, we thank you very much. I would like to see if you're going to be writing a book about Northampton anytime soon, because you've pretty much covered just about all of it in that 5-minute segment. So thank you very much for doing so. In one word, what's the score going to be today?
Loss. In one word, loss.
Okay,
it'll be. I think 2-1 Lincoln.
From a Lincoln City perspective, we'll take that. Charles, much appreciated. Great to have Charles on the show. Charles from the It's All Cobblers podcast, and he predicts a loss for his side this afternoon. Gary, it sounds like a man that's got the weight of the world on his shoulders.
I think he sounds like a fan who understands his club inside out, and I found that quite fascinating insight, to be honest. From the outside looking in, Northampton look like a strong side, get the ball back to front quickly, winning the games that they need to. But it feels to me that there might be a little bit of an undercurrent there as well. So, makes for a more interesting afternoon. I love listening to opposition fans talk. I really do.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The sort of utterances, because you have the highs of the playoffs. You know, they had that brilliant season, and you could hear it in Charles's voice almost when he's talking about, you know, that beauty of the playoffs, and then the slight lows of so far this season, but then the potential to have the highs again. If they can win a few, they'll be pushing perhaps for those playoff spots as well, if they can get a good run together just after the Christmas period. Well, that is what it is about, isn't it, as a football fan, essentially, the highs and lows. If we didn't have those, there would be no point supporting the team. It's just, for Lincoln City fans, we've had a lot more highs recently than the lows.
Yeah, historically we've probably had more lows, so we're just getting our what we deserve. I think it's interesting because my gut feeling was, had last season not ended as it did, Northampton probably wouldn't have been in the top 7. I think Port Vale were on a really good run. And Charles correctly pointed out, you know, they were well beaten in the first leg against Cheltenham. Cheltenham were amongst the favourites, even from the playoffs, to go up. They were playing some lovely football under the manager, I think, Michael Duff. So it was a real surprise. I think they were helped not having fans in the stadium, certainly at Wembley. You know, when a more direct style of football doesn't draw the ire of the home fans because they're not there. So I think they were able to defend more. I know that sounds silly in a 4-0 win, but I think Exeter couldn't deal with Northampton. They almost did what we tried to do under Keith Alexander, but they were successful with it. So interesting, though, to see the squad break up. And there was, for me, a question mark over Keith Curle. You know, 17 years, you know, very rarely managed in League One. I just wonder if he's a manager that might not see out the season, depending on the financial situation there.
Charles has just messaged me then saying, really sorry that I went on a bit of a rant there. I got on a roll. No need to apologise at all. That's what we like to hear from opposition fans. We want to know the ins and outs of the club and why you support them. So no apologies at all from Charles needed there. Great to have his insight, no doubt about that. Let's go to the starting 11 graphic if we can now. I'll once again take you through this afternoon's starting 11. Michael Appleton making no changes to the side that played against Shrewsbury on Tuesday night. Alex Palmer's in goal, TJ Omer, Lewis Monsma, Joe Walsh and Teo Eden. George Grant is the captain once again. No Liam Bridcut, unfortunately, this afternoon. Remy Howarth maintains his place in the starting 11. James Jones is the other central midfielder. Brennan Johnson, Anthony Scully making up those attacking wide positions. And Tom Hopper, the number 9, starts up front once again for the Imps. Long, Melbourne, Gotts, El Bazedi, Anderson and Rowan. Gary, we've talked about this afternoon's starting 11. We've got a couple of minutes left on the show. I want to look ahead to the next few fixtures, if possible. We've got the next 5. If we can bring those in, Gary. We've got Burton Albion, the massive game, Hull City away. Wimbledon follows that. Peterborough, another huge game. Accrington at home as well. When you look at those next 5, TJ looks ready for them, doesn't he? Are you?
15 points. Yeah, absolutely. No, look, it's a tough run, but there are no easy games. Hull and Peterborough will be tough games, but let's not kid ourselves. Wimbledon, Accrington and Burton all 1 point as well. And Accrington are coming up. By the time we meet them, looking at the form table, they could well be above Hull and Peterborough. So there's certainly 3 games there that you would be more than happy to take probably 4 points from and then top them up with games against Burton and Wimbledon. But again, it's, you know, you take any selection of 5 games and there are 5 teams there that are capable of beating you and 5 teams that you want to beat. So it's a busy little run through to January the 12th. And I think if we were to come out of that run with 9 points, I think we will have done well, personally.
Burton away, opportunity to see some old faces as well. Neil Eardley, Michael Boswick. You know more about League One football than I do. Have they been playing regularly for Burton? I believe they're both struggling to start or get in the starting 11. Am I right in saying that? Pull me up if I am.
I think there's been injury problems with both. I think for one stage early in the season, both were missing. It says Burton away there. I'm hoping that one's at home on Boxing Day.
The home, yeah, of course it is. We're both there for that one, aren't we? I believe. Save us a journey.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to turn up and Burton on Boxing Day. No, they're both good. Good players, solid players for this level. I think they've both struggled a little bit with injury. For us, Neil Eardley perhaps not so much, but Bozzy certainly did. And I think, you know, they're the sort of players that if you've got them in the squad, they're going to give you 100%. But like you say, they haven't been playing as well. Burton does look like the sort of game you've really got to go in to win that when you look at the ones that are coming up as well. So I'm quite hopeful for that game, to be honest.
Guy, really appreciate your time. Once again, I'm letting you off the hook. I'm not going to make you give a score prediction this afternoon, but I'll see you on Boxing Day for Burton Albion at home.
Yeah, wonderful. 0-0, by the way, Sam. Don't push me.
There you go. I don't even need to ask him now, and he gives them for free. Guy Hutchinson, of course, you can follow him at Twitter, at Stacey West blog on Twitter, stacey.west.net as well for all your Lincoln City news needs. Really appreciate your company on today's Match Day Live. If you go to www.weareimps.com/iFollow, you can get your match pass now. All the build-up on BBC Radio Lincolnshire. We'll see you next Saturday, Boxing Day, when the Imps take on Burton Albion. But from us here this afternoon, fingers crossed the Imps can get another 3 points and maybe go joint top of the League One table. Do enjoy the game. We'll see you later.